We hear the term international trade all the time, and it sounds kind of distant, right? Like something that happens on massive cargo ships or in corporate boardrooms. But here's the thing. It literally powers our banks, it funds our roads and bridges, and it's what keeps the Indian rupee stable. So yeah, let's dive into this. Because if you want to understand our economy, you have to understand this connection.
And that quote, it just nails it, doesn't it? It gets right to the heart of the matter. Trade isn't just a bunch of numbers on a spreadsheet. It's the actual lifeblood of our financial system. And today, we're going to follow that lifeline, right from the ports all the way into the very core of our economy.
All right, so first up, let's get into the mechanics of this financial lifeline. How exactly does a container of exported software from India translate into a stronger rupee? Or how does a shipment of imported machinery actually help fund a brand new highway? Seriously, think of it like a chain reaction, a set of dominoes. Every single dollar that an Indian company earns from an export doesn't just sit in its bank account. Nope, it ripples out through the entire system. It strengthens our banks, and it even directly impacts how much money the government has to spend on things we all need, like roads and hospitals. And here is that domino effect in action. It's this incredible positive feedback loop. It all starts when our exports bring in foreign currency, right? Well, that increases the demand for the rupee, which makes our currency stronger. And healthier exporters, well, they become better, more reliable customers for our banks. And finally, when the private sector is thriving, it pays more in taxes, which gives the government more room or fiscal space to spend. It's a perfect virtuous cycle when it's working right.
So when you boil it all down, trade is directly feeding these three massive pillars of our financial world. Exports pump liquidity and capital into the system. And hey, even imports, as long as they're being used productively by our industries, they fuel the kind of growth that expands the government's ability to spend. You see, trade isn't some separate thing from finance. It is finance in motion.
Okay, so we've seen how it all works. Now let's get into the what. What's actually in India's global shopping cart? What are we selling to the rest of the world, and what are we buying from them?
I mean, just look at this list. Our export basket is incredibly diverse. This isn't a story about just one or two key products. We are shipping everything from refined fuels that power other countries, to cars rolling off the assembly line in Chennai, to life-saving medicines developed in Hyderabad. And that diversity, it's a huge economic strength, because it makes us way more resilient if one particular industry has a bad year.
And this chart breaks it down beautifully, showing us where the big money is coming from. A full quarter of our export earnings are from petroleum products. That is massive. But look over here. Electronics, machinery, and pharma. These are the high-value, skill-heavy sectors that are becoming more and more crucial for bringing in that vital foreign cash.
Okay, now this is where things get really fascinating. You see a lot of overlap here, right? We import and export machinery, electronics, and gems. But notice that huge difference right at the top? We export finished, refined petroleum products, but we import absolutely massive amounts of the raw material, crude oil.
And this right here is the single most important factor on the import side of the equation. Our deep dependence on foreign crude oil means that global oil prices have a direct and often immediate punch-to-the-gut effect on our economy. It influences everything from the price of vegetables to the government's entire budget. It is, without a doubt, our biggest vulnerability. But the story doesn't end there. Two pretty recent trends are helping us out. First, our refineries are getting so efficient that we're exporting more and more finished fuels, and that helps balance out the cost of all that crude we're buying. And second, there's our gigantic services industry, especially IT. It acts like a financial shock absorber, bringing in a steady stream of foreign income even when the trade in physical goods gets a little shaky.
So, all of this brings us to a really contentious issue in economic policy: tariffs. Are they a smart tool that we can use to protect our own industries, or are they just a hidden tax that ends up hurting everybody in the long run? Let's break down this debate.
So, is putting up these kinds of trade barriers a good idea? Well, this is a question that creates a huge divide between policymakers and economists, and it's because they see tariffs in two totally different, fundamental ways.
This slide just lays out that tension perfectly. On one side, you have policymakers who often reach for tariffs as a way to shield local companies from tough foreign competition. But on the other side, economists are waving these big red flags, pointing to decades of evidence that shows tariffs usually just raise costs for everyone, from you and me at the grocery store to our own manufacturers who need to import essential parts and machines.
And this quote just nails it, you know? The political appeal is obvious. It sounds great to say you're protecting an industry. But the economic reality is often this widespread, slow-burning cost that can end up weakening the very manufacturing and financial systems you were trying to help in the first place.
So if just throwing up tariffs everywhere is a really risky game, what's the alternative? How can we use trade policy to actually build a stronger financial system? Well, it turns out there's a pretty clear playbook for a much smarter approach.
And this playbook shows how all the pieces can fit together. See, it's not about having zero protection. It's about being strategic. First, use targeted support, not these wide, blanket tariffs. Second, actively go out and boost those high-value exports like pharma and electronics. Third, don't rely on just one country for our critical imports. Diversify. And finally, make sure our financial system is strong enough to back our exporters, using tariffs only as a last, very specific and temporary resort. Now, if you take away just one single thing from this entire explainer, it should be the core principle that guides the smarter policy. The one-line rule to remember is this:
Protect strategy, not sector. That's the whole idea. The goal shouldn't be to just blindly protect a specific industry because that's what we've always done. The goal should be to protect our overall economic strategy, a strategy that's all about building a resilient, a competitive, and a financially strong economy for the long haul. So, I'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. Given everything we've talked about, the need to earn foreign currency, the need to move up the value chain, if you were in charge and you could only throw major support behind one export sector to secure India's financial future, which one would you pick? High-tech electronics, life-saving pharmaceuticals, or high-volume petrochemicals? It's a tough call. Think about it.